A wild Mustang mare lay struggling in the cold Wyoming dirt, her skeletal body trembling with exhaustion as she fought through a difficult labor. The F wasn't coming, and as storm clouds gathered overhead, both lives hung in the balance. Most people would have walked away. Wild horses weren't meant to be saved, but Eleanor Miller, a 76-year-old former veterinarian with arthritic hands and a lifetime of experience, made the decision that would change everything. With minutes to spare, she stepped in to help a creature that should have feared her more than death itself. What Elena couldn't know was that this desperate act wouldn't just save 2 lives. It would divide an entire town, challenge everything she thought she knew about wild animals, and led to a moment so extraordinary it would leave everyone who witnessed it completely speechless, because many after the birth, this wild Mustang did something that defied nature. An act of trust so profound, it would set in motion events affecting not just Elena's life but the future of wild horses throughout Cottonwood Springs. Quick pause before we continue. Tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. The wind howled across the open plains, bending the tall grass in waves as dark clouds rolled over Black Rock Ridge. Eleanor Miller pulled her weathered hat lower over her eyes and scanned the horizon. Something didn't feel right. Her border collie Duke stood alert at her side, ears perked forward. "What is it, boy?" Eleanor asked, her voice nearly lost in the wind. Her joints ached with the coming storm, a constant reminder of her 76 ears. Duke barked once and took off, running toward the creek that marked the eastern edge of her property. Eleanor sighed, her breath forming a small cloud in the April chill. She wasn't as spry as she used to be, but Duke rarely got excited without reason. "Hold on, I'm coming," she called, making her way carefully down the gentle slope, leaning on her walking stick. The first drops of rain began to fall as she followed the path towards Silver Creek. The sound reached her before the sight, a pained, desperate whinny that sent a chill through Elena's bones. She knew that sound, a horse in trouble. She quickened her pace as much as her arthritic knees would allow, around the bend near the cluster of cottonwood trees that gave the town its name. She saw it, a wild Mustang mare, her ribs showing prominently beneath her dull coat, lay on her side in the mud. Her sides heaved with oblate breathing, and her eyes rolled white with pain and fear. "Oh my God," Eleanor whispered. Duke circled at a respectful distance, whining softly. The mare was clearly in labor. But something was wrong, very wrong. Elena could see one tiny hoof protruding, but the foal wasn't progressing. Elena approached slowly, speaking in low, gentle tones. "Easy, girl. Easy now." The mare's head jerked, up, nostrils flaring as she caught Elena's scent for a moment. Pure wild terror flashed in her eyes, and she struggled to rise, only to collapse back into the mud with an agonized groan. Eleanor had spent 50 years as an equine veterinarian before retirement. She'd seen countless FES born, had pulled more than she could count from difficult positions, but never like this, never with a wild Mustang, never in the open with a storm bearing down, and never alone at her age. "You're going to die out here," Eleanor said softly. "You and your baby both." The mare stared at her, chest heaving. Time stretched between them, woman and wild creature, each assessing the other. Thunder rumbled overhead. Elena made her decision. She pulled her phone from her pocket, but as expected, there was no signal this far from town. She was on her GR. "Duke, stay back," she commanded, setting down her walking stick and kneeling slowly in the mud. Her knees protested, but she ignored them. The mare watched her approach, eyes wide but too exhausted to fight. Elena kept her movement slow and deliberate, her voice a constant soothing murmur. "I've delivered hundreds of foes, started when I was just a girl on my daddy's ranch. I know what I'm doing. If you'll let me, I can help." The mare's ears flicked towards voice. "That's right. I'm not here to hurt you." Elena was close enough now to see that the mare was in even worse condition than she'd first thought. She was severely malnourished, her hip bones jutting sharply beneath her skin. How she'd managed to carry a foal to term was a miracle in itself. "You must have been separated from your herd," Eleanor murmured, too weak to keep up the first real contraction hit. And the mare threw her head back, a guttural sound escaping her throat. Elena saw the problem immediately. The foal had one leg back, a textbook dystocia. Without intervention, neither would survive. Eleanor took a deep breath and pressed her hands gently against the mare's swollen belly. I'm going to have to reach in and reposition your baby. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it's the only way. As if understanding the mare's eyes locked onto Eleanor's in that moment, something passed between them. Desperation. Recognizing desperation. Perhaps the May didn't flinch when Eleanor moved behind her. Eleanor removed her jacket. Despite the cold, and rolled up her sleeve. Her hands weren't as steady as they once were, but muscle memory ran deep. She'd done this procedure hundreds of times. Here we go, girl. Rain began to fall in earnest as Eleanor worked. The May trembled but remained still as Eleanor carefully reached inside to locate the F's other front leg. The position was awkward and pain shot through Elena's shoulder, but she didn't stop. I've got it, she muttered, gripping the tiny leg and gently guiding it forward to join the other. Now we're cooking. The mare let out another groan as Eleanor aligned the F properly. Push, girl, push now, as if on command. The mare gathered her remaining strength. Eleanor helped guide the FO as it emerged first. The head, then the shoulders. The most difficult part. That's it, good girl. With a final tremendous effort, the rest of the foe slipped free. Eleanor quickly cleared the amniotic sac from its nose and mouth. For a heart-stopping moment, the tiny creature lay motionless. Come on, little one, Eleanor pleaded, rubbing its chest vigorously. The foe gave a sudden gasp, then another. It began to breathe. Breathe, thank God, Eleanor whispered, her voice breaking. She sat back in the mud, suddenly aware of how hard her heart was pounding, how soaked she was from both rain and sweat. The mare raised her head, trying to see her fall. Eleanor carefully lifted the wet, gangly newborn and placed it near its mother's head. The May immediately began to lick the foe, cleaning it with long sweeps of her tongue. Eleanor stood shakily, retrieving her jacket from the ground. You did good, Mama, real good. The storm was intensifying. The temperature was dropping with the coming night. And Eleanor knew that the newborn FO wouldn't survive long in these conditions. But what could she do? This was a Wild Mustang, not some domesticated horse. She couldn't just lead them back to her barn. I need to get help, she told the mare, as if the wild creature could understand. I'll be back. Eleanor turned to leave, whistling for Duke to follow when she heard movement behind her. The mare was attempting to stand, her legs trembling violently with the effort. Easy now, Eleanor cautioned, you need to rest. But the mare was determined. With tremendous effort, she managed to get her legs under her and rise unsteadily. The foal remained lying in the mud, still too weak to stand. Eleanor watched in amazement as the mare took one shaky step toward her, then another. There was no aggression in the movement. If anything, it seemed almost pleading. What are you doing, Eleanor? Asked softly the mare. Nickered gently, then took another step forward, before turning her head back toward her foe. Understanding dawned on Elena's face. You want me to help your baby? The mare whined softly. That's not possible, Eleanor whispered. You're wild, you should be running from me. But the mare didn't run. Instead, she nudged her foe gently with her nose, then looked back at Eleanor. Eleanor felt something catch in her throat. In 50 years working with horses, she'd never seen anything like this. Wild Mustangs were notoriously protective of their foals. They would fight to the death rather than let a human near their newborn. Your baby needs warmth and shelter, Eleanor said finally. My barn is about half a mile from here. Do you understand what I'm saying? The mare took another shaky step toward Eleanor. This isn't normal, you know, Eleanor said, blinking rainwater from her eyes. None of this is normal. She made a decision, moving slowly. Eleanor bent and carefully gathered the foe into her arms. It was lighter than she expected, all spindly legs and wet fur. The mare tensed but didn't interfere. I'm going to carry your baby to somewhere warm and dry, Eleanor explained, though she felt foolish talking to a wild horse you can follow. If you want or not, it's up to you, with the foe cradled against her chest. Eleanor began the difficult trek back to her ranch. Duke led the way, occasionally looking back as if to hurry her along. Elena's arms and back screamed in protest at the burden, but she kept moving behind her. She heard the uneven sound of hooves the mare was following. Well, I'll be damned, Eleanor muttered. By the time Eleanor reached the fence line of her property, the small, weathered sign reading, Whispering Pins Ranch, barely visible through the rain, she was gasping for breath. The foe stirred weakly in her arms, making tiny sounds that tugged at her heart. Almost there. Little one, she promised, Tom Wilson. Her nearest neighbor at 72 was closing up her barn doors. When she approached, he must have seen the storm coming and come to help. He froze at the sight of Elena carrying the foe, then his eyes widened even further at the wild mare following behind Eleanor. What in God's name opened the barn door? Tom, Elena called, her voice strained, and don't make any sudden movements. Tom complied, too shocked to argue. Elena carried the FO into the warm, hay-scented darkness of the barn. Her aging quarter horse Rusty nickered a greeting from his stall. Clear that empty stall, Elena directed, quick but quiet. Tom moved with surprising agility for his age, pushing fresh hay into a corner of the vacant stall. Elena gently laid the fold down on the soft bedding. Now back away, she told Tom. We've got company. They both turned to see the mare standing hesitantly at the barn entrance, rain streaming off, her emaciated frame. Her dark eyes took in the strange surroundings, nostrils flaring at the unfamiliar scents. That's a Wild Mustang, Tom whispered unnecessarily. What did you do, Elena? I delivered her foe. Eleanor replied simply. She followed me here. That's not possible. Wild Mustangs don't. I know what they don't do. Elena interrupted Ed, but here she is. They stood frozen as the mare took one tentative step into the barn, then another. Rusty whined a greeting from his stall, and the mare's head jerked toward the sound. Easy girl, Elena called softly, your baby's right here, as if understanding. The May moved directly to the open stall, where Eleanor had placed the FO. Without hesitation, she entered, and immediately lowered her head to nuzzle. Her baby Tom let out a breath he'd been holding. I've never seen anything like this in my life, neither have I, Eleanor admitted. Neither have I. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The storm raged throughout the night, rain pounding on the barn roof while wind whistled through the cracks in the aging wood. Eleanor sat on a bale of hay watching the M unfold in the dim light of a single lantern. Tom had tried to convince her to come back to the house, but she'd refused. You can't stay out here all night, Eleanor. He'd argued, you're soaked through and it's freezing. I've got blankets, she responded, pulling an old quilt from a storage chest, and that May doesn't trust anyone but me right now. I need to be here if something goes wrong. Tom had reluctantly left, promising to return at first light with breakfast and dry clothes now. As midnight approached, Eleanor found herself dozing, only to jerk awake at the slightest sound. The mare hadn't eaten the hay Eleanor had offered, but she had accepted water, drinking deeply from the bucket. The foe had finally managed to stand on wobbly legs and was now nursing, drawing whatever nourishment it could from its depleted mother. You need to eat, Elena told the mare softly. You can't feed that baby if you don't feed yourself. The May lifted her head, regarding Elena with those intelligent eyes that seemed to hold more understanding than any wild animal should possess. Elena had started thinking of the mare as Willow. Thin but strong, bending but not breaking Willow, she said aloud, testing the name. The May's ears pricked forward. And your little one? Elena glanced at the foe, its coloring beginning to show through its dried coat, a deep bay with a bright white star on its forehead. Spirit, that's what we'll call you. Got plenty of that, don't you? Coming into the world the way you did? Elena wasn't sure when she had started thinking of them as staying Wild Mustangs belonged on the range, not in a barn, but something about Willow's behavior. I suggested she had no intention of leaving anytime soon. A particularly strong gust of wind rattled the barn doors, and Elena pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Her clothes had mostly dried, but the chill had settled deep in her bones. She was going to pay for this tomorrow. Her arthritis would see to that. Worth it. Though she murmured, watching Spirit nurse. Absolutely worth it. She must have cled off, because the next thing she knew, pale dawn light was filtering through the barn windows and Tom was shaking her gently. Eleanor, you okay? She blinked, disoriented, then winced as pain shot through her. Neck and back. Sleeping, sitting up against a wooden beam, hadn't done her any favors. I'm fine, she said, her voice hoarse, just stiff. Tom helped her to her feet, then handed her a thermos coffee, black and strong. Just how you like it. Bless you, Elena said, accepting it gratefully. Tom's gaze drifted to the stall where Willow stood watchful. Spirit curled at her feet. They're still here. Did you think they'd vanish in the night, honestly? Yes? Tom shook his head in. Wonder that's a Wild Mustang, Elena. They don't just domesticate overnight. She's not domesticated. Elena corrected, sipping the hot coffee. She's made a choice. There's a difference. What are you going to do with them? Elena considered the question. The reasonable answer was to call. The Bureau of Land Management wild horses were under their jurisdiction and technically harboring Willow. And Spirit without authorization was probably illegal. I'm going to help them, she said finally, get them healthy. Then we'll see. Tom looked skeptical but didn't argue. He handed her a paper bag, egg sandwich eat. Elena hadn't realized how hungry she was until the scent of food hit her. She devoured the sandwich as Tom checked on Rusty in the neighboring stall. I called Dr. Rodriguez. Tom said casually. Too casually, thought he might want to take a look at your new guests. Elena paused mid-bite. You had no right to do that. You delivered a foe in the mud during a thunderstorm, then spent the night in a drafty barn. Forgive me for being concerned. I'm perfectly capable of being stubborn as a mule, yes. I know. Tom's expression softened. He's just coming to check on the horses, Eleanor, and maybe take a look at that shoulder you're trying not to favor. Elena realized she'd been holding her right arm stiffly against her side, the moose screaming from the strain of the previous night's efforts. Fine, she conceded grudgingly. But if he tries to report them to the BLM, he won't not, without talking to you first. Elena turned her attention back to Willow in Spirit. The foe was awake now, exploring the stall on unsteady legs, while Willow watched. Protectively, she still won't eat. Elena noted with concern. I've tried hay grain, even some apples, nothing. Tom studied the Mare. She's skin and bones. Elena probably been starving for weeks. Sometimes they get like that. Forget how to eat regular. Feed. I need to get her strength up if she's going to nurse that foe properly. Dr. Rodriguez will know what to do. As if. On cue, they heard the sound of tires on gravel outside. A moment later, James Rodriguez entered the barn carrying his veterinary bag. At 45, he had taken over Elena's practice when she retired, and they had maintained a respectful professional relationship, despite Elena's occasional unsolicited advice. Good morning, he said cheerfully, then stopped short at the sight of Willow and Spirit. His expression shifted from surprise to concern to fascination in the span of seconds. Tom wasn't exaggerating. Did you think he was? Eleanor asked. A Wild Mustang voluntarily following you to your barn after you delivered her foe? Yes, I thought he might be embellishing. James approached the stall slowly. This is unprecedented. She won't eat. Eleanor said, cutting to her most immediate concern, the foe's nursing, but she can't produce enough milk in her condition. James nodded, his professional demeanor taking over. Let's take a look at them both. Elena entered the stall first, murmuring soothingly to Willow, who eyed James wearily but didn't react when he followed the trust she had extended to Elena. Apparently didn't extend to others. Easy girl, Elena said. He's here to help. James examined Spirit first, his hands moving efficiently over the foe's small body. Male, he confirmed, appears healthy, despite the circumstances. Good muscle tone. Clear eyes, strong heartbeat. He's straightened. He's a fighter like his mother, Elena said. James turned his attention to Willow, moving more cautiously. The mare's ears flattened, but she allowed his approach. Severely malnourished, he said, after his examination. Dehydrated, though that's improved. Since you gave her water, some minor lacerations on her legs, probably from difficult terrain, but no diseases I can detect, which is fortunate. What about her not eating? James pulled a few items from his bag. I'll give her an IV nutrient boost for now. We'll need to reintroduce solid food gradually. Some mashes with extra supplements as he prepared the IV. James glanced at Elena. You know I should report this to the BLM, right? Elena stiffened. They'll take them away. They're wild horses, Eleanor. They belong under BLM management. Look at her, James. She chose to come here. She trusted me. That doesn't change the regulations. Eleanor stepped closer, her voice dropping. They'll separate them. Send Willow back to the range if she's lucky, or more likely to some holding facility in Spirit. He'll go into the adoption program. That might be the best outcome for them both. No, Eleanor said firmly. The best outcome is right here, where they're safe, where they chose to be. James sighed as he administered the IV to Willow, who stood surprisingly still for the procedure. I know you, Elena. You've already named them, haven't you? Elena didn't deny it. I can give you some time. James conceded a few days to get them stabilized, but after that we'll need to contact Sarah Parker at the BLM. She's reasonable. She'll listen to your side of things. Elena nodded, though she had no intention of giving up Willow and Spirit, not now. Not ever. Something extraordinary had happened between her and this Wild Mare, something she couldn't explain but also couldn't ignore. James finished treating Willow and turned to Elena. Now let me see that shoulder. Elena tried to protest, but both James and Tom insisted. After a brief examination, James confirmed what Eleanor already knew. She had strained several muscles during the delivery. Nothing torn, he said. But you need to rest it. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity. I have horses to care for, Eleanor reminded him. Tom and I will help, James said firmly. You've done enough heroics for one weekend. After James left, Tom stayed to help with the morning chores. Elena prepared a warm mash with extra supplements for Willow. Following James's instructions, come on, girl, she encouraged, offering the bucket. Just try a little. Willow sniffed the mash suspiciously, then to Elena's relief took a tentative taste. After a moment's consideration, she began to eat slowly. That's it, Elena said softly. Good girl. Tom watched from the stall door. You know James is right. You can't keep them forever. Why not? Elena challenged. I have the space, the experience. They wild horses. Elena, government property. Technically, they're living beings who made a choice. Tom sighed. This isn't going to end. Well, maybe not, Eleanor admitted, but I have to try. As the day progressed, words spread quickly through Cottonwood Springs about Eleanor's unusual new guests. By afternoon, several cars had driven slowly past her property occupants, straining for a glimpse of the Wild Mustang, and her FO Elena was checking Spirit's legs when a distinctive black pickup truck pulled into her driveway. Her stomach sank as she recognized Matthew Collins's vehicle. The wealthy rancher had made no secret of his disdain for the wild horse herds that occasionally competed with his cattle for grazing land. Great, she muttered. Just what we need. She met Collins at the barn door, blocking his entry. At 55, he was imposing, tall and broad-shouldered, with a perpetual frown beneath his expensive cowboy hat. Heard you've got yourself a Mustang problem, Elena, he said without preamble. I don't see any problem, she replied coolly. Wild horses belong on BLM land or in government holding facilities, not private property. She came here of her own accord. Collins snorted. And I suppose she filled out the paperwork too. Those animals are destroying grazing lands. They're overpopulated, undernourished, and damaging the ecosystem. This particular mayor is just trying to keep her baby alive. Ellen counted, and I'm helping her do that. You're breaking federal regulations. I'm planning to contact the BLM once they're stronger, Elena lied. Collins studied her face, clearly not believing her. The town council meeting is Thursday. I'm bringing this up as a public safety concern. Public safety? That's ridiculous. Is it wild, unpredictable animals near residential areas? What happens when that mayor decides to bolt through someone's backyard, or when other Mustangs follow her here? That won't happen. You don't know that Collins took a step closer. I've been pushing for a reduction in the local Mustang population for years. This incident just proves my point. They're becoming too bold, encroaching on private property. She was desperate and injured, Elena said through gritted teeth. And now she's your responsibility, Collins replied. If anything happens, it's on you. He turned to leave, then paused. Think carefully about this, Eleanor. You've got a good reputation in this town. Don't throw it away over some romanticized notion about wild horses. Elena watched him drive away, anger and determination hardening in her chest. Collins had influence in Cottonwood Springs. His family had been wealthy landowners for generations. If he wanted to make trouble for her and Willow, he could just try it. She muttered later that evening, as Eleanor sat on her porch with a cup of tea. Her phone rang. It was James Rodriguez. How for your patience, he asked. Better. Willow's eating the mash regularly now. Spirit's getting stronger by the hour. Good. James paused. Listen, I heard Matthew Collins paid you a visit. News travels fast. It's a small town. He's already called me asking about the legal implications of wild horses on private property. Elena tightened her grip on the phone. And what did you tell him the truth? That I don't know all the regulations, but that the humane treatment of animals comes first in my book. Thank you, don't thank me yet. James warned Collins has the mayor's ear and half the town council. If he decides to make this an issue, let him try, Elena said with more confidence than she felt. Just think about contacting Sarah from the BLM yourself. Better to get ahead of this after hanging up. Elle walked back to the barn for one final check before bed. The sight that greeted her made her pause in the doorway. Willow stood peacefully in, her stall spirit curled beside her in the clean hay. The May's head was up, her eyes alert but calm as she watched Elena enter. There was no fear, no wild panic, just quiet acceptance, perhaps even gratitude. Elena approached, slowly extending her hand. Willow stretched her neck forward and for the first time deliberately touched her muzzle to Eleanor's palm, in a gesture that brought unexpected tears to the elderly woman's eyes. "We're going to be okay," Elena whispered, running her hand gently along Willow's neck. "I promise you." That as if in response, Willow leaned slightly into Elena's touch, a wild Mustang accepting human contact without fear or coercion. It defied everything Elena knew about these animals, and yet here they were. Whatever storm Matthew Collins might bring, Elena would weather it for Willow, and Spirit, she would face down the entire town if necessary by Thursday morning. Spirit was racing around the stall on legs that grew steadier by the hour. Willow had gained a small but noticeable amount of weight, her eyes brighter, a coat beginning to show hints of its natural luster. Elena watched them from the barn doorway, a cup of coffee warming her hands against the morning chill. "You're looking pretty pleased with yourself," Tom remarked, arriving with his daily offering of fresh eggs. "From his chickens, they're getting stronger," Eleanor said. "Willow finished all her feed last night and asked for more. She nickered at me and nudged the empty bucket. If that's not asking, I don't know what is." Tom shook his head with a mixture of amusement and concern. "You know the town council meeting is tonight." The momentary happiness faded from Elena's face. "I know Collins has been busy. Stopped by Maggie's place yesterday. Talked to half the town about the wild horse problem." "There is no problem," Elena snapped. "I know that and you know that, but Collins is painting a picture of dangerous wild animals infiltrating the town, threatening children, damaging property," snorted Willow. "Can barely walk to the water trough without getting winded, let alone rampage through town. People believe what they want to believe." Tom hesitated. "Are you going to the meeting?" "I have to," Elena said firmly. "Someone needs to stand up for these horses." After Tom left, Eleanor spent the morning working with Willow. The mayor had grown comfortable enough to allow Elena to brush her standing quietly, as the brush removed dirt and dead hair from her coat. Spirit watched curiously, occasionally approaching to sniff at the brush before darting away on his spindly legs. "You're going to be a handful," Elena told the FO fondly, "just like your mama." Around noon, Elena's phone rang. It was Sarah Parker from the Bureau of Land Management. "M. Miller. This is Sarah Parker, wild horse and burro specialist with the BLM. Dr. Rodriguez suggested I call you about a Mustang, Mare, and F on your property." Elena tensed. "James had no right to. He's concerned about you, Miss Miller, and about the horses. He thought I might be able to help navigate this situation." Eleanor remained silent, weighing her options. "I'd like to come see them," Sarah continued, "not to take them away, just to assess their condition and discuss options." "What kind of options?" "Legal ones primarily. There are ways to keep wild horses on private property, but there's paperwork, inspections, requirements. So you're saying I might be able to keep them legally?" "Possibly," Sarah said carefully. "There's the private care agreement program, though. It's usually for older horses removed from the range. Your situation is unusual, that's one word for it." Eleanor agreed. "Could I stop by this afternoon before the town council meeting?" Elena hesitated, then agreed. Around 2. Perfect. Elena spent the next hour cleaning the barn and preparing herself for what felt increasingly like an inspection. She changed into fresh clothes and even put on a touch of lipstick armor for the battle ahead. Sarah Parker arrived precisely at 2, parking her government vehicle beside Elena's ancient pickup. She was younger than Elena had expected, maybe late 30s, with practical clothes and a non-nonsense ponytail. Her handshake was firm. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Miss Miller." "Eleanor, please," and I didn't feel I had much choice. Sarah smiled. Slightly. I'm not the enemy, Eleanor. I care about these horses too, even when they don't fit neatly into governed regulations. Especially then. Sarah's expression softened. 20 years ago, I was the little girl who plastered her bedroom walls with wild horse posters. I took this job to protect them, not persecute them. Elena studied the younger woman's face and saw sincerity there. Perhaps she had an ally. After all, they're in here, she said, leading the way to the barn. Sarah's professional demeanor momentarily slipped when she saw Willow and Spirit. Oh, she breathed, they're beautiful. Willow watched the stranger wearily from her stall, positioning herself protectively in front of Spirit. She's already looking better than I expected, Sarah noted. Based on Dr. Rodriguez's description, I thought she'd be in worse condition. She's a fighter, Elena said proudly. And she's eating well now. Sarah observed them quietly for several minutes. Dr. Rodriguez told me about the circumstances, how you delivered the foe during the storm, how she followed you home. She made a choice, Elena said firmly. Wild Mustangs don't typically make that choice. This one did. Sarah turned to face Eleanor directly. I need to be straight with you. Matthew Collins called our office. Yesterday, he's demanding these horses be removed immediately, citing safety concerns and regular violations. Eleanor blew a surge of anger. Of course he is. He has some valid points, legally speaking. You don't have authorization to keep wild horses on your property. So authorize me, Sarah sighed. It's not that simple. There are processes, applications, waiting periods, and even then, typically we only place older horses in private care, not a mayor with a new FO. So what are you saying? Officially, I should be loading these horses into a trailer right now and taking them to our holding facility in Rock Springs. Eleanor stiffened. I won't let that happen. I didn't say that's what I'm going to do, Sarah clarified. I'm giving you context for the town council meeting tonight. Collins knows the regulations. He'll use them against you, so what do you suggest? Sarah pulled a folder from her bag. I've brought the paperwork for an emergency F-fearing application. It's a temporary solution used mostly for injured wild horses that need rehabilitation before returning to the range. If approved, it would give you legal permission to keep them for at least 60 days. Elena took the folder, hope rising in her chest. And after 60 days, we reevaluate. By then, we might be able to transition you to a more permanent arrangement depending on how things go. Azor glanced at Willow and Spirit. They aren't going back to the range, maybe. Not, Sarah conceded, but this buys us time to figure out the best solution for everyone. Collins won't like it. No, he won't. Which is why you need to be at that council meeting tonight with these forms filled out and ready to present. I'll be there too. After Sarah left, Elena sat at her kitchen table filling out the extensive paperwork, her hand cramped around the pen, but she pressed on, determined to have everything ready for the meeting at 6:30. Tom arrived to drive her to the town hall. Elena had dressed in her best clothes, a blue blouse she saved for special occasions and slacks without any feed stains. She'd even found an old brooch shaped like a horse head, gift from her late husband Frank years ago. You look ready for battle, Tom commented as she climbed into his truck. That's exactly what this is, Elena replied, clutching the folder of completed forms. The Cottonwood Springs town hall was already packed. When they arrived, Elena recognized most of the faces in a town of just over 0 people. It was hard not to. Some nodded in greeting, others avoided her gaze, and a few whispered behind their hands as she made her way to an empty seat. Matthew Collins sat near the front, surrounded by several other ranchers and business owners. Mayor Harold Barnes was arranging papers at the council table, while the 5 council members took their seats. Elena spotted Sarah Parker near the back and was relieved to see a friendly face. Quite a turnout, Tom murmured. Word got around. Collins made sure of that. Elena replied. The meeting began with routine matters: approval of road maintenance budgets, discussion of the upcoming summer festival, reports from various committees. Elena sat through it all with growing impatience, aware of the clock ticking. Willow and Spirit were alone at her ranch, and though they were secure in the barn, she hated leaving them for long. Finally, Mayor Barnes reached the agenda item labeled Public Safety Concerns. Wild horse incident. Matthew Collins has raised a matter for discussion. The mayor announced. Mr. Collins, please proceed. Collins stood, adjusting his bolo tie with practiced authority. Thank you, Mayor. As many of you know, there was an incident last weekend involving a wild Mustang Mare that wandered onto private property through circumstances that remain unclear. This dangerous wild animal is now being kept in a residential area without proper authorization or safety precautions. Elena bristled at his characterization, but remain. Silent wild horses are unpredictable. Collins continued they can be aggressive, especially mares with FOs. They carry diseases that can spread to domestic livestock, they damage property, and according to federal regulations they belong under BLM. Management not in someone's backyard. Murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Collins was hitting all the right points to stir up concern. I move that the count request immediate removal of these wild horses and return them to proper federal custody for the safety of our community. Mayor Barnes nodded. Ms. Miller, as the property owner in question, would you like to respond? Elena stood, feeling every eye in the room upon her. Her heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. What Mr. Collins has failed to mention is that this mare was dying. She was in labor, struggling to deliver her FO during the storm last Friday night. I found her on my property line and helped her deliver her baby. I saved their lives. She paused, looking around the room, and then something extraordinary happened. This Wild Mustang, instead of running away as soon as she could, followed me back to my barn. She chose to trust a human, probably for the first time in her life, because she knew her baby needed help. That a lovely story, Collins interrupted, but it doesn't change the regulations. Those horses are government property, not strays you can take in like abandoned kittens. They are living beings who made a choice. Elena counted firmly, and I have initiated the proper procedures to care for them legally. She held up the folder of paperwork. I've completed an emergency fostering application with the Bureau of Land Management. This will allow me to provide rehabilitation care for these horses while their permanent status is determined. Collins scoffed. Those applications take weeks to process. You're in violation of regulations right now, actually. Sarah Parker stood up from her seat as the BLM representative for this district. I can confirm that Ms. Miller's application will be expedited given the emergency nature of this situation. The mayor's condition upon rescue qualifies her for immediate emergency care authorization. A murmur of surprise ran through the crowd. Collins clearly hadn't expected the BLM to support Eleanor. Furthermore, Sarah continued, I've personally inspected the horses today. They are receiving excellent care, are securely contained, and pose no threat to the community. This sets a dangerous precedent. Collins argued, if we allow one person to keep wild Mustangs, what's next? Will we have wild horses or all over town? That's ridiculous. Elena shot back, this is a unique situation, is it? Collins turned to address the room. How many of you have had problems with Mustang herds damaging your property, competing with your livestock for grazing, costing taxpayers millions in management fees? Several hands went up, mostly fellow ranchers. The Mustang population is out of control. Collins continued, the ranges can't sustain them. The holding facilities are overcrowded, and now they're coming into our town, endangering our safety. One starving May hardly constitutes an invasion, Elena said. Dry, some scattered laughter broke the tension slightly. The broader issue, Mayor Barnes interjected, is whether private citizens should be allowed to keep wild horses within town limits. Our current ordinances don't specifically address this. Councilwoman Davis, the oldest member of the council, and someone Elena had known for decades, spoke up. I'd like to hear more about the condition of these horses. Dr. Rodriguez, you examined them professionally. Are they dangerous? James Rodriguez stood from his seat halfway back. The mare was severely malnourished and exhausted. When I first examined her, she could barely stand, let alone pose a threat to anyone. The FO was newborn and fragile. Both are recovering well under Elena's care, and in your professional opinion, Councilwoman Davis Press, would moving them to a BLM facility at this time be in their best interest? James hesitated, glancing between Eleanor and Collins. No, he said finally. The stress of transport and adaptation to a new environment could be detrimental to their recovery, particularly so medically speaking, the best course of action is to leave them where they are, at least temporarily. Yes, Collins stepped forward again. With all due respect, the emotional attachment Miss Miller has formed with these wild animals is clouding everyone's judgment. These are not pets. They are federal property and should be managed accordingly. Elena felt her temper rising. They are living creatures who came to me for help. I didn't go looking for them. I didn't trap them. The mayor chose to follow me. Horses don't choose anything. Colin scoffed. They react based on instinct and conditioning. Then how do you explain a wild Mustang? Not a domesticated horse, but a truly wild animal voluntarily entering a human structure and remaining there. How do you explain her allowing me to handle her newborn? How do you explain her following me half a mile through a thunderstorm? Collins had no immediate answer. Eleanor addressed the council directly. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm following the proper procedures through the BLM. All I want is the chance to help these horses recover before any permanent decisions are made. The proper procedure, Collins counted, would have been to contact the BLM immediately, not a week later after setting up an unauthorized sanctuary. The proper procedure was saving their lives, Elena fired back. Which is exactly what I did. The debate continued, voices rising as townspeople took sides. Elena found unexpected support from several quarters. The local teacher, who thought the horses could be educational for her students, the owner of the general store, who figured visitors might come to see the famous Mustang, even the elderly librarian, who quietly mentioned that tourism related to wild horses brought significant revenue to other Wyoming towns. As the discussion grew heated, Mayor Barnes called for order. I think we've heard enough to make a preliminary decision. The council will vote on whether to issue a temporary exception to any ordinances that might prohibit keeping these specific horses within town limits. Pending proper BLM authorization, the vote was close, 3 in favor of allowing Elena to keep Willow and Spirit 2 against. Collins's face darkened with anger as the mayor announced the result. This isn't over, he said to Eleanor as people began to file out of the town hall. Those horses belong on BLM land. Not in your backyard. They're not in my backyard, Elena replied calmly. They're in my barn being well cared for, which is more than they would have gotten out on the range in their condition. You think you're helping them, but you're just prolonging the inevitable. Wild horses can't be pets, Elena. Sooner or later that M will remember what she is, and someone could get hurt. Is that a threat? Collins's expression hardened. It's a fact. Wild animals remain wild no matter how much you wish. Otherwise, Eleanor watched him stride away, her momentary triumph fading. She had won this round, but Collins was right about one thing: this wasn't over. Sarah Parker approached, offering a tight smile. Well done. I'll submit your paperwork first thing tomorrow. Will it be approved? I'll make sure it is, Sarah promised, but Collins isn't wrong about the challenges ahead that might seem docile now, but wild instincts run deep. Willow is different, Eleanor insisted. I hope you're right. Sarah hesitated. Just be careful and document everything: her progress, her behavior, the F's development. We'll need all of it for the permanent placement review. As Tom drove her home, Elena felt the weight of the evening's confrontation settling into her tired bones. The victory had come at a cost. She had publicly opposed Matthew Collins, one of the most influential men in Cottonwood Springs. She had essentially declared that she knew better than the established systems for managing wild horses, and she had committed herself to a battle that was far from over yet. When they pulled up to her ranch and she hurried to the barn, all doubts vanished. Willow nickered softly in greeting, pressing her muzzle against the stall door. Spirit pranced excitedly at the sound of Elena's voice. We won the first round, Elena told them, reaching through the bars to stroke Willow's nose. They can't take you away, not yet anyway. Tom watched from the doorway, his expression unreadable. You know, Collins won't stop. He's got friends in the state government, connections in the livestock industry. Let him try. Elena said, her resolve strengthening as Willow leaned into her touch. Some things are worth fighting for. As the days passed, Willow's transformation continued to amaze everyone who saw her. Her coat, once dull and patchy, began to shine with renewed health. Her ribs, though still visible, no longer protruded so sharply, and most remarkable was the change in her eyes. The wild fear had been replaced by a calm awareness, an intelligence that seemed to assess everything around her. Spirit thrived under the combined care of his mother and Elena. The foe grew stronger daily, his legs steadier, his personality more evident. He was curious and bold, investigating every corner of the stall, nibbling at Elena's sleeves and playfully darting away when she reached for him. He's going to be a handful, Dr. Rodriguez commented during his follow-up visit a week after the town meeting. Full of spirit, just like his name, just like his mother, Elena added. Watching, Willow closely supervised the examination of her foe. The Mare still kept herself between any visitor and Spirit, but she no longer showed signs of aggression or fear, merely watchful protection. "She's looking much better," James observed. "You've done wonders with her. She's done the work herself. I just provided the means." James checked Willow's vital signs, nodding with satisfaction. Strong heartbeat, good respiration, better muscle tone. She's responding well to the feed regimen. Can I start letting them out into the small paddock? Elena asked. They need more space to move. James considered this medically. I don't see why not. Willow's strong enough for limited exercise. He paused, but once she's out in the open, you think she'll run? It would be natural. She's wild, Elena. She's chosen to stay so far in a confined space with a newborn too weak to travel. Things are different now. Eleanor had considered this possibility. Every day she expected to come to the barn and find Willow agitated, seeking escape, but the opposite had happened. The Mare seemed to settle in more comfortably with each passing day, as if accepting this new reality. I'll need to test it sooner or later, Elena said. I can't keep them stalled forever. Just be prepared, James warned, and maybe have someone with you the first time. Tom, perhaps later that afternoon. Elena called Tom. Can you come over tomorrow morning? I'm going to let Willow and Spirit into the paddock. Tom arrived at dawn the next day. Elena had already prepared the small enclosure behind the barn. Secure fencing, fresh water. A few piles of hay scattered around. It wasn't large, perhaps half an acre, but it would give the horses room to move freely for the first time since their arrival. You sure about this? Tom asked, as Elena opened the stall door, lead rope in hand. No, Elena admitted, but it's necessary. She approached Willow slowly, talking in the soft, steady voice that had become their shared language. The Mare watched her intently. Ears forward. We're going outside today, Eleanor told her, holding up the lead rope. Just a little walk. You and me, Spirit, can follow. To Tom's amazement, Willow allowed Elena to attach the rope to her halter without resistance. Eleanor had been working on this for days, teaching the wild mare to accept the unfamiliar equipment, building trust through patience and gentleness. Easy. Now, Eleanor murmured, giving a gentle tug on the rope. This way. Willow hesitated, looking back at Spirit. Eleanor waited, not pulling, simply standing at the end of the slack rope. After a moment, Willow stepped forward and Spirit scrambled to follow his mother. Elena led them slowly through the barn and out the back door toward the paddock when sunlight hit them. Willow stopped abruptly, her head high, nostrils flaring as she scented the fresh air. Spirit pressed against her side, equally alert to the new sensations. Tom held his breath. This was the moment of truth. If Willow's wild instincts took over, if the call of freedom overpowered her connection to Eleanor, there was little the elderly woman could do to stop her. Eleanor seemed to sense this too. She unclipped the lead rope, stepping back to give Willow space. It's your choice, she said softly. Always has been. The May stood frozen for several long seconds, her eyes scanning the horizon. Visible beyond the paddock fence, the wide booming sky stretched endlessly, the distant mountains where her herd roamed barely visible in the morning haze. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Willow lowered her head and began to graze on the fresh grass at her feet. Spirit, taking his mother's cue, bounced away to explore the paddock. His tiny tail flagged high in excitement. Tom let out the breath he'd been holding. Well, I'll be damned, she's staying. Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. She's really staying. Tom put his hand on Elena's shoulder. You did it, old friend. You earned her trust. They watched in comfortable silence as Willow moved slowly around, the paddock always keeping Spirit within sight but allowing him to explore. For the first time they could see the F's natural gait, the beginnings of what promised to be a smooth, powerful stride. He's going to be magnificent, Elena murmured, just like his mama. Tom agreed, once she fills out, she'll be quite a sight. Elena was about to respond when she noticed a black pickup truck slowing on the road past her property. Matthew Collins. He stopped briefly, watching the horses in the paddock, then drove on. He's not giving up. Tom noted. Neither am I. That evening, as Elena sat on her porch watching the sunset, Sarah Parker's SUV pulled into the driveway. The BLM agent looked tired but pleased as she approached with a folder in hand. Good news, she said without preamble. Your emergency fostering application has been approved. You have official authorization to keep Willow and Spirit for rehabilitation purposes for the next 60 days. Elena felt a weight lift from her shoulders. You don't thank me yet. This is just the first step. Sarah glanced toward the paddock where Willow and Spirit were visible in the fading light. I had to pull some strings. Bend. Some regulations. I appreciate it. Collins has already filed a formal complaint with my supervisor. He's arguing that these horses should be in a BLM facility, not private care. Elena's momentary relief evaporated. Can he overturn the approval? Not easily, but he's persistent. Sarah handed Eleanor the folder this contains. All the documentation you need. Follow every requirement to the letter. Feeding schedules, medical records, progress reports. Don't give them any reason to question your care. I won't, Sarah hesitated. There's something else you should know. Collins has been meeting with state officials arguing for an emergency gather of the herd. These two came from a roundup. On what grounds? Overpopulation, resource competition with livestock, the usual arguments. But he's using Willow as an example, claiming that if one Mare was in such poor condition, the entire herd must be suffering and should be removed for their own welfare. Elena's hands tightened around the folder. That's absurd. He doesn't care about their welfare. He wants their grazing land for his cattle, I know that. But he's making a compelling case to people who've never seen these horses up close. Sarah lowered her voice. Between you and me, I think he's worried about. What about what you're proving every day, that these dangerous, unmanageable wild horses can form bonds with? Humans can adapt, can trust it, undermines everything he's been saying for years about the Mustang problem. Elena considered this. So this isn't just about Willow and Spirit anymore. It never was. Sarah said simply, you're at the center of a much bigger battle now, whether you meant to be or not. After Sarah left, Elena went to the paddock where Willow and Spirit had settled for the evening. The Mare approached the fence, stretching her neck to greet Elena with a soft nicker. We're in for a fight, girl, Elena told her, running her hand along Willow's now gleaming neck. But we're going to win it together. Spirit pranced over, butting his head playfully against the fence boards. In just 2 weeks, he had transformed from a struggling newborn to a confident, thriving foe. Elena couldn't help but smile at his antics as darkness fell. Elena reluctantly led them back to the barn for the night. The paddock wasn't secure enough yet for overnight stays that would require additional fencing and a proper shelter expenses. Eleanor was still figuring out how to manage on her limited retirement income. Back in her house, Eleanor sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, reviewing the documents Sarah had left. The requirements were stringent: daily health monitoring, specific feed requirements, regular veterinary checks. Detailed documentation of behavior and progress. At the back of the folder was a form she hadn't expected. An application for permanent private care placement. Attached was a handwritten note from Sarah for, when the time comes, not easy to get approved, but not impossible either, especially with the right advocate. Elena smiled, feeling a renewed sense of hope. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but it was possible. She had 60 days to prove that Willow and Spirit belonged with her, 60 days to demonstrate that sometimes the most unconventional solution was the right one. She was about to head to bed when her phone rang. It was James Rodriguez. Elena. I just got a call from Lisa Collins, Matthew's wife. What did she want to warn us? Matthew's not just filing complaints, he's organizing. He's convinced several other ranchers to support his position. They're planning something. Though Lisa wasn't sure what exactly. Why would she warn us? She's his wife. James hesitated. Lisa has always been more moderate than Matthew, and she's always had a soft spot for horses. Her father was a horse trainer before he passed Eleanor or digested this information. So we have an ally in the enemy camp, a reluctant one. She's worried about repercussions if Matthew finds out she's talking to us. What do you think they're in planning? Nothing illegal. Most likely Matthew's too smart for that, but he has connections, influence. He could make things very difficult for you. After hanging up, Eleanor checked on the horses one last time. They were set, LED comfortably in their stall, Willow standing protectively over a sleeping Spirit. The Mare lifted her head at Elena's approach, eyes soft in the dim light. We'll face it together, Elena promised, whatever comes next. The first serious challenge arrived 3 weeks after the town council meeting. Elena was mucking out Willow's stall while Spirit nipped playfully at her boots when Tom's truck came barreling up. Her driveway far faster than his usual cautious pace Eleanor. He called, hurrying into the barn. "You need to see this." He thrust a copy of the Cottonwood Chronicle into her hands. The headline made her blood run cold. County Commissioners consider Emergency Wild Horse Management Resolution. Eleanor quickly scanned the article. Collins had taken his fight to the county level. Bypassing the town council's decision, the county commissioners were considering a resol solution that would declare wild horses an immediate public safety hazard within county boundaries, requiring their prompt removal to federal facilities. "They can't do this," Elena muttered. "The town council already voted. The county supersedes the town." Tom reminded her grimly, "And Collins has friends on the commission. When's the vote? Tomorrow morning. 10's at the county courthouse in Green River." Elena handed the newspaper back, her mind racing. "I need to be there. We'll both go," Tom said firmly. "And I've already called James. He's reaching out to Sarah Parker at the BLM." Elena nodded gratefully, then turned her attention back to Willow, who was watching the exchange with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand far more than a wild animal should. "Don't worry," she told the mayor softly. "They're not taking you anywhere." By evening, word had spread throughout Wood Springs. Elena's phone rang constantly, neighbors offering support, local business owners concerned about Collins' tactics, even Councilwoman Davis, warning that the county commissioners had likely already made up their minds. "It's a stacked deck," the elderly councilwoman said bluntly. 3 of the 5 commissioners lease grazing land to Collins. They'll vote however he tells them to. "So what can I do?" Elena asked. "Make noise. Bring supporters. The commissioners hate public scrutiny. They're used to making decisions." With nobody watching, Alana stayed up late into the night, making calls, coordinating with Sarah Parker, and preparing her statement for the commissioners. When she finally fell into bed, exhaustion claimed her immediately, but her sleep was restless, filled with dreams of Willow and Spirit being chased by faceless men in black trucks. Broke with a spectacular Wyoming sunrise that Elena barely noticed as she fed the horses and prepared for battle. She wore her best outfit, a navy blue skirt, suit she hadn't worn since Frank's funeral 15 years ago, and pinned the silver horse brooch to her lapel. Tom arrived to drive her to Green River, his truck freshly washed for the occasion. "You look like you're heading to court," he commented. "That's exactly what this is," Elena replied. "A court where the judge and jury have already decided we're guilty." The county courthouse parking lot was surprisingly full when they arrived. Eleanor recognized vehicles from Cottonwood Springs and surrounding communities as she and Tom approached the entrance. She saw a small crowd gathered, at least 30 people, many holding handmade signs with messages like, "Save Willow and Spirit and wild horses belong in Wyoming." Abigail Johnson, the local teacher, approached. "Ayla," with a broad smile, "My students made the signs," she explained when they heard what was happening. "They insisted on helping." "How did everyone know to come?" Elena asked. Overwhelmed by the unexpected support, social media said a young woman, Elena, didn't recognize Rachel Green. "I managed the Cottonwood Springs community page. Your story went viral locally after I posted about the county commission meeting." Eleanor blinked in surprise. "I don't even have a computer. You don't need one." Rachel grinned. "Your story speaks for itself." The older woman who saved a Wild Mustang and her FO now fighting the wealthy rancher who wants to send them to a government holding pen. It's perfect content inside the Yoel courthouse. The meeting room was packed. The 5 commissioners sat at their elevated bench, looking uncomfortable at the unusual turnout. Matthew Collins sat in the front row, flanked by several other ranchers in matching association jackets. He turned when Eleanor entered, his expression darkening at the sight of her supporters. Sarah Parker waited near the back, professional in her BLM uniform. She nodded to Eleanor, her expression guardedly optimistic. "Quite a turnout," James Rodriguez commented. "Joining Eleanor and Tom Collins doesn't look happy good," Eleanor said firmly. The meeting began with procedural matters before moving to the emergency resolution regarding wild horses. Commissioner Phillips, a balding man with a permanent frown, read the resolution aloud. The language was even worse than Eleanor had feared, declaring all wild horses an imminent threat to public safety and demanding their immediate removal from private property within county boundaries when public comment was opened. Collins spoke first, his voice carrying clearly through the room. "This isn't about one woman's emotional attachment to federal property," he began. "It's about precedent and public safety. Wild horses are unpredictable, dangerous animals. They carry diseases that can spread to livestock. They damage property and they belong under proper federal management." He turned to face the crowd. "If we allow private citizens to keep wild horses without proper facilities or training, what's next? Will we have Mustangs in backyards across the county? Will children be injured when these unpredictable animals revert to their natural behaviors?" Murmurs rippled through the audience, some agreeing, others disagreeing vehemently. The BLM exists for a reason. Collins concluded they have the facilities and expertise to manage these animals properly. Private citizens do not. When Eleanor's turn came, she approached the podium with steady determination. The silver horse brooch caught the light as she adjusted the microphone. "3 weeks ago," she began, "I found a dying Mustang mare struggling to give birth during a storm. I didn't seek her out. I didn't trap her. I simply helped when help was desperately needed." She described the birth in detail. The mare's condition, the complicated delivery, the foal's first precarious moments of life. "What happened next defies everything we think we know about wild horses." Elena continued. "This mare, who should have fled at the first opportunity, followed me to my barn. She chose to trust me with her newborn foe when she couldn't protect it herself." Eleanor looked directly at the commissioners. "I've spent 50 years as an EON veterinarian. I've worked with thousands of horses. I've never seen anything like the bond that formed that night." She held up the BLM authorization papers. "I have legal emergency fostering approval from the Bureau of Land." Sarah Parker spoke next, official, confirming Eleanor's fostering authorization and attesting to the horse's condition. James Rodriguez provided his veterinary assessment, emphasizing that moving the horses would endanger their health. What Eleanor hadn't expected was the parade of community members who rose to speak on her behalf. Abigail Johnson described educational visits she'd arranged for her students. Pete Thompson from the feed store mentioned increased business from tourists coming to town hoping for a glimpse of the famous Mustang Ray. Little Feather spoke eloquently about Native American perspectives on the spiritual connection between humans and wild horses. Most surprising was when Lisa Collins stood up, her husband's head whipped around his face, registering shock as his wife approached the podium. "I visited Elena's ranch," Lisa said, her voice quiet. "But I've seen these horses. They are well cared for, contained and peaceful. They pose no threat to our community." She hesitated, then added, "We should be proud that something this extraordinary happened here instead of fighting it. We should be celebrating it." Matthew Collins's face flushed dark red. He stood abruptly and left the room, the door slamming behind him. When all comments concluded, the commissioners conferred quietly among themselves. The crowd waited in tense silence. Finally, Commissioner Phillips cleared his throat in light of the significant public interest in this matter and the existing BLM authorization. "We've decided to table this resolution pending further review. M. Miller may continue to house these specific horses under her current BLM permission provided there are no safety incidents." It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough. The resolution hadn't passed. Eleanor had more time outside the courthouse. Supporters surrounded Eleanor with congratulations and offers of help. Lisa Collins approached cautiously, keeping distance between herself and the main group. "Thank you," Elena said simply, when they had a moment alone. Lisa glanced toward the parking lot where her husband's truck was peeling out. "He won't forgive me for this. Why did you do it?" Lisa's eyes grew distant. "My father raised quarter horses. He taught me that every horse, wild or domestic, has a soul worth respecting." Matthew never understood that before Elena could respond. Lisa hurried away to her own car. Sarah Parker joined Elena as the crowd dispersed. "That was closer than it looked," she warned. "Collins nearly had the votes until the public turnout changed the calculus. What happens now? You continue under the emergency fostering authorization. I'll work on the permanent placement application." But it won't be easy. There's no precedent. For this situation, there's precedent for everything," said Emma Jackson, the town librarian who had overheard their conversation.